Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning if you're here in Maui. If you're in Trenton, Michigan, uh, good afternoon. If you're in Toronto, well, it's probably, what is it? What time is it in Toronto right now? Oh, it's 4 o'clock as
Four
well.
o'clock
So,
in Toronto.
yeah, so we got 11 o'clock, we've got 1 o'clock in Vancouver, and we got 4 o'clock in the Michigan, Toronto area, the center of the universe, as people like to say. So today we have a returning guest. We have Gordon Dale from Dale and Associates, and he's from Trenton, Michigan. And I had to ask the question because we had a great guest on a few weeks ago. His name was David Lazon from Barclay Damon, and he's in Buffalo, and he's an estate planning lawyer. And I got to hook you two guys up. I think you'd enjoy meeting each other. I think there'd be some great synergy
That'd be
between the
great.
two of
Yeah.
you. But Gordon, welcome to the Snowbirds Expat Radio podcast once again.
Thank you.
And today we are going to be covering a great strategy, not only for Americans who could reduce a lot of taxes, but for a Canadian who decides to move back to Canada after serving all those wonderful years in the United States, and they want to get back to be closer to family. So we're going to be covering Roth conversion strategies, going from your IRA to your Roth IRA. And it's a simple one because last time I checked, and Gordon, you can tell us for sure, who pays more taxes, Canada or United States?
Generally Canada. Very few exceptions to that rule.
Oh, that's so nice to be number one after losing the gold medal at the World Juniors this last little while.
That's right.
So before we really get into it, I want to congratulate Michigan on winning the title in football. That was an exciting game. I did talk to you that day, so I did tune in. And because I'm kind of a Washington, Vancouver guy, I did find myself rooting for Michigan. So congrats.
Yes, it was a great game.
Okay, well, let's jump into it. Why don't you first of all tell me the difference between we hear about this conversion strategy, and this is very common amongst every financial institution in the United States, telling people this is a wonderful strategy. Not that the fact that you're going to move back to Canada, but internally, if you live in the United States, converting money from either a 401k to a Roth 401k or an IRA converting over to a Roth. So first of all, tell me the difference between the two, the Roth 401k, sorry, the Roth IRA, and of course just a regular IRA.
Sure. So a regular IRA is a mechanism here in the U.S. that is similar to an RRSP. You're limited on how much you can put in to it, but you get a tax deduction generally, if assuming other criteria are met. The growth of that plan is tax deferred at the time until you pull it out, and then you're taxed generally on all of the money that you take out, unless there were some non-deductible contributions. Then we do some fuzzy math to come up with what is taxable. When they came out with the Roth IRAs in the Tax Relief Act of 1997, they said, all right, we have the similar functioning tool, but we will not give you a deduction when you put money into the program. But to help you, we will not tax any of the distributions, assuming you meet certain criteria, when you withdraw the money at retirement. So it becomes not taxable at all. So all of the growth, all of the principal, everything you take out would be non-taxable in the end. So that's the main difference between the two.
So the biggest thing that we're seeing, and we'll get into this, the similarities between an RSP and the TFSAs, and like you say, they're very, very similar. But I got to tell you that in the United States, you can be a lot more creative, and there's a lot more rules which will allow you to put yourself in a better position from a tax perspective. In Canada here, we are just guilty of kicking the can down the road, and eventually you're going to have to pay the piper. So talking about this conversion from an IRA to a Roth IRA, why is this going to become, if it isn't being done by Americans, that Canadians living in the United States, if this is not popular, or is it popular that you're seeing a lot of these Canadians trying to set themselves up better when they move home?
I haven't seen it being used much yet. The challenge with this conversion or this strategy is that you have to pay tax in the current year. So when you draw money out of another retirement plan, and we'll use an IRA, a regular IRA as an example, you would have to pay tax on that withdrawal and then put it into the new one. So it's the cash hit that you take up front that is usually the piece that slows people down from executing this strategy.
And the strategy itself, I mean, if we're just talking about numbers, I know that from a couple's point of view, it's a 24% tax rate up to $364,000.
Correct.
So last time I checked Canada, I think, and I'm going to be sarcastic along the way, the rates in Canada are almost double that.
Sure.
So you'd have to believe, and this is where you and I are going to be out there saving the world, all those Canadians coming back home, is that if we can intercept these people earlier enough, this strategy that makes sense. So let's use an example. We'll just come up with this Bob and Mary Smith, and they've got $1 million in their IRAs, and they are making less than, let's say their total income right now is $200,000 between the family.
Mhm.
So we know that they've got a lot of room. So kind of paint that picture, what that scenario would look like. If we knew that these Canadians, Americans on a green card or whatever the case is, what would that situation look like for them if we had 4 or 5 years to work with them? What would be the best case scenario for them?
Well, we could start, an annual strategy of withdrawing funds up to the max if we wanted to cap out the 24% bracket, their graduated brackets. So if we kept, added, it's $200,000 of income less the deductions that we get here in the US that are standard. We'd probably be able to pull out $140,000, $150,000 a year to get it to that max 24 rate. And then it's growing in that Roth tool. And so if they start this program before, like you said, planning for it before they move back, they could get all or most of the money converted from from the regular IRA retirement plan into a Roth, and then have some ability to even have that money tax free in Canada when they finally return to Canada.
Is there ever a time if we only had 3 years and they had $1 million in that IRA? I know the next bracket after 364, it goes up to about 32%.
Correct.
Is there still an opportunity for them? Because the tax rate in Canada is going to be extremely high on $1 million IRA.
There probably is, because when you start blending, so it's a graduated rate. And so when you start doing the math, and yes, that those incremental dollars will be taxed at 32%. Even at the 35% rate, your effective rate is a little over 30% when you use all of the brackets. So it's still not that onerous. And like you said, when you compare it to the Canadian income tax rates, it still seems favorable. And because Canada does not tax its citizens on their global income, you're only paying US income tax now. And then when you move back, this income in the Roth IRA won't be taxable.
So we just saved Mr. and Mrs. Smith. If you're out there, give us a call, give Dale a call. Dale will pass on all your contact information. But why isn't it being done? If you said you haven't seen it, and you are a cross-border accountant, you've referred a lot of wonderful people to us, and if it's not being done, why isn't it being done?
One, not the Roth, using Roth strategy is just not known very well yet. People haven't explored or moved back yet. The clients that I'm dealing with generally are in place. They're not ready to return or ready to retire yet. So they haven't started trying to figure out the plan to move back and what do we do with our money. And I think they're afraid of, if we move $400,000 or $500,000, even in the US, writing a check for $150,000 is still a daunting task, and people are trying not to do that in the current time now, thinking that it'll be better later.
Well, there was a great book that the last couple of days, as I was preparing for this call, that I read through all the scenarios of why people aren't doing it. Not just Canadians who are planning on moving home, but those U.S. people. And I think a lot of cases is that they said the two first things you got to deal with is your age. If
Hmm.
you're in your 70s and you've got a large, let's say, for example, you're already receiving your RMDs, required minimum distributions, there gets to a point where $1 million IRA is already got you in the highest marginal tax rate possible. So I can see why you wouldn't do it after the age of 72 or whatever. I believe that there is changes that have been talked about moving these RMDs up to age 75,
Correct.
which this strategy will become very, very, very important
Yes.
for people. And of course, the second one is based on age as well, because if you're 59.5 years of age, it doesn't make sense either because there's an additional 10% when you pull money out of your IRA. So I guess that doesn't make sense. But um,
This is well, the IRS has written in that if you make a conversion, that you won't get hit with the 10%. So you're only paying income tax on these conversions now. So whether you're 30 or 60, as long as it's from program manager to program manager. So if you're dealing with it and you have someone who has an IRA and you convert them, there won't be that 10% extra tax on it.
okay, that's good to know. Now, what forms, I mean, obviously, you really want to make sure you're communicating this with your accountant
Correct.
because you would be receiving, is it, if you take any distributions from your IRA, is it a 1099-R that you'd be receiving?
That is correct. You're going to get a 1099-R for each plan that you draw money out of. Generally, if you're under 59 and a half, where it would normally be penalized, there would be a code 2 on it to get a little more technical, saying
Okay,
there's an exception to the penalty. But it
okay,
would show as taxable, and then we'd be able to move forward without the 10% penalty.
okay. Now, there's a form out there. Is there a form that you have to fill out? It's called an 8606.
That's
That
if
was really good.
that is if there is non-taxable distributions in that as well. So that form could come into play. That would be part of the income tax return potentially.
Okay. And the rule is when you do convert to the Roth from an IRA to the Roth IRA, um, there's a 5-year window there that eventually you're going to be you can take out your principal that
Yep.
you've moved over and pay tax on, but your the growth and the interest would have to be taxed eventually
If well,
if you take it
yes,
out before
if you
five.
pull it out, so if you start an IRA, Roth IRA, and you pull out all of it before time is before a 5-year mark, then you would be taxed on all of it. If you hit retirement age, 59 and a half here in the US, and you've had the account for more than 5 years, you will not pay tax on any of it.
Okay.
And
You
that's
know
going to
what
be an
I
important part when we get into the treaty discussion about, okay, I'm ready to move back. I've executed the first part of the strategy. Now what do we do?
okay. So so how many people, I mean, you're dealing with people that have Americans that have tax issues, and you're doing the Canadian side as well.
Yep.
Um, so we really haven't seen a lot of, when do people come to you that know that they're going to move back to Canada?
Good question. I don't know. I mean, in theory, I'm sure, I could be helping them now while they're here in the US. The earlier that we get in touch with them and work with their financial advisors to put these plans in place, the better, so that we can utilize the growth factor of no taxation, and then also the ability to pass this on to your heirs potentially. As you have to any retirement plan here in the U.S., you have to list beneficiaries, and it could be a great wealth transfer strategy as well.
So so have you come across like a lot of Americans? Now we'll stop talking about Canadians, and not everybody in Canada, not all the Americans that are Canadians are going to come home. Are you seeing this strategy a lot? I mean, for these Americans, are people coming to this? I think
Not
you mentioned that it's nothing, huh?
Not yet. It really hasn't hasn't taken shape yet on the ability to use this. And I think a lot of it is just awareness. There's a lot of advisors that just haven't figured out that there's some big advantages to doing this. Especially converting now. And some of it is relatively recent. The 10% penalty has held people back in the past, but in the last few years, the legislation has changed to eliminate that penalty to convert an amount.
Okay. And there's also another strategy out there for American people that the ones that don't qualify for a Roth IRA, because Roth IRAs are based on income levels and different things.
Correct.
There's another strategy out there where people are actually making after-tax contributions to an IRA, whatever that limit is, if it's $7,000 or I
Yep.
forget what that number is. And then they're just then they're eligible to open up a Roth IRA. Another
Correct.
strategy that's very popular.
Yep. So a backdoor Roth strategy. So if you earn outside of the limit, so for a married couple, it's the phase out starts around $218,000 in 2023. It grows to 230,000 in 2024. So if you earn more than that, you would be ineligible to contribute to an IRA. However, you would still be able to make a contribution to a regular IRA, and and even if you had a 401k plan or other employer retirement plan, it would become non-deductible. Then you would go open a Roth IRA and convert the contribution that you made to the regular IRA and move that over to the Roth. So we call it a backdoor. So you can still get it done and still make contributions on a regular basis.
Because I'm a Canadian and I lived in Canada most of my life, I do go back and forth to Maui, which we've mentioned many times as becoming our real home. Um, it it's surprising you're so limited on the Canadian side on what you can do. Like, could you imagine if they ever allowed you to take out, well, first of all, we don't have the same tax rate, so it's physically impossible to take money from an RSP and put it into a TFSA. It's too bad because Americans have so many great planning tools. Now, the other thought that I had, and we are going to be doing these webinars, and this is going to be a great subject to. I was telling our last guest, David Lazon, that we've got a new feature on the app. It's not completed yet, but it will be a pop-up, and it'll tell you the next coming seminar. Excuse me. The first webinar, which we're going to be doing, is making sure that people have a power of attorney for that beautiful home they have down south, because they're going to run into issues. They're going to run into issues if something was to happen to either one of them, because the POA in Canada will not function in the United States. So that's one thing that we want to do. But I believe this will be top on the list, if not number two, of really trying to get these Canadian families to work with someone like Gordon, 4 or 5 years before they leave, and make sure that everything's done properly. Because boy, the tax savings, I don't want to use a Trump word like enormous,
Yeah.
but I just did. It really is a big savings, isn't it? If you plan ahead.
Absolutely. Is not only are you not paying any tax here in the US, but if executed correctly, and it's not hard to do, you wouldn't be paying any tax in Canada on that as well. The treaty will allow Canadians to treat that income just like Americans do.
And a beneficiary of a Roth IRA, there are no restrictions. You get
Correct.
it. The beneficiaries are not going to pay tax on it.
Correct.
And the other beautiful thing is that a Roth IRA does not have RMDs as well.
That is correct. Yes.
So tell me, why wouldn't you do this?
Be hard pressed to come up with logical reasons. Most of them will be illogical.
Really? Well, like I say, the more I read on this, I put this book binder together today, and there's some great videos on YouTube on this conversion strategy. And there was a great book that I was able to invest $3.95 for. And it's very informative. I haven't gone through all of it. So other than that, what other things are you doing in your practice for Canadians that you want to tell all the Snowbird US Day Tracker and expats about?
I think one of the biggest thing is a lot of people are selling or moving real estate in the US, and understanding that they will have a tax filing obligation on it. Generally, the tax on those real estate sales is pretty nominal because we have a capital gains rate that keeps it pretty low. But you get a fair amount of withholding on the deal, and so you have to file a tax return in the new year to get the remainder of your refund. So it's being wary of that and know that it's a bit of a process to get that done.
Now, here's something that came up the other day. I was meeting with a family from Squamish, which you would know where
Mhm.
Squamish is because
Yeah.
you are a BC boy.
Yep.
Um, the spouse was what they call an accidental American,
Mhm.
and she ended up filing for a passport before ever getting herself compliant with the tax returns that she had to file. Now, what damage has she done with the principal residence now that they find out she's a US person? And if you can imagine Squamish, which is outside of Whistler, which is a beautiful little community, their home is appreciated um, by, if not double, maybe even triple over the last 15 years.
Sure.
What has she exposed herself to from a principal residence point of view on the Canadian side? And what does she have to file if they sell that home for gazillions and have a huge capital gains?
Well, in theory, all of as a U.S. citizen, we are taxed on our global income. So the accidental American, one who was maybe born down here but has lived their entire life in Canada, and not been really aware of the tax requirements, stumbles into a lot of problems, especially if they own a corporation or something. The penalties can get really large. So the income tax filings for that U.S. person living abroad are very onerous. And so she could expose herself to multitudes of penalties in the US. And even if she had filed timely, there may have been no tax due at the time. I've done a return for a gentleman who ended up owing over $50,000. And had we filed timely, it would have been zero. But
Sure.
didn't know, wasn't advised properly. And so in order to get out of the penalty and to be compliant, he had to pay the big penalties.
So in this situation, this family sells this home. It's a principal residence. They file their tax returns.
Hmm?
There's no tax being owed on the Canadian side. Correct, right? It's a principal residence in
Correct.
Canada for
Correct.
both of them.
Yep.
But on the US side, if there's let's say the house has gone from, let's say it went from 250,000 all the way up to, I'm going to use a number of 1.5.
Yep.
So the capital gains would be 1.25 million.
Yes.
So she would only get she would get a $250,000 exemption because she lived 2 of the last 5 years. Is that correct?
She
She would
would
get that.
get on over the basis, she would get $250,000. If she was married, it would double. But if she's married to an American, if she's
Yes.
married to a Canadian, then she would just have the $250,000. So essentially, there would be $1 million subject to 15%, possibly 20% tax rate. And so she could be subject to $200,000 of U.S. tax.
Okay. So what can she do? So it doesn't matter. The capital gains is the capital gains. It's not half of it would go to the husband. So we would say only $625,000 would
Correct.
be hers. It would be the full amount would be taxable.
Potentially, if she is married, then and half of the house is hers, then it would cut in half. Um,
Okay.
but if it was just her by herself, then the whole thing would be subject to tax. Yes. So there was a hidden tax, especially on West Coast real estate, if you sell it.
Yeah, and in this situation, I guess you could argue that it'd be 625 minus 250. So whatever that is times the rate. So you figure it could be 20 to 30% could be the rate in that situation.
It would be the max would be 20% on the capital gains, and on $250,000, your $50,000 of tax when it'd be zero in Canada. So this would be
Yeah.
a situation where the Canadians are in a better tax position than we are.
Well, it sounds like I'm going to refer this fine family over to you. They yeah, so other than that, what else are you seeing in on your side? I mean, we've got tax rates in Canada. We saw so many changes on the real estate side. Some of our favorite places like Qualicum Park, so in the News Bay, is now all taxes are being increased based on speculation and trying to slow down housing. So if we bought a house in Qualicum right now, I think if we bought tax would be another 0.5% on the value of the home. So on $1 million home, I guess you're looking at another, I guess that works out to be $5,000 or whatever the case is.
Oof.
What do you, yeah, exactly. What are you seeing on the US side? Are there taxes going up, going down?
Taxes,
Um,
well, the Tax Act of 2017 that Trump put in place, many of the individual provisions are going to start expiring. And so you're going to start hearing a lot more noise about taxes going up. But we're a little bit out from that. But as we get into the political funny season here, those things are going to become more vocal. That people are going to raise taxes when in fact it's just the expiration of some of the provisions of the act down here.
Now, Michigan is, I know some of the states are. Would that be a Republican state, Michigan, or is it a swing state?
It is a swing state, but right now it is Democratic.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
And the mood out there is that it's going to swing back to the Republicans, possibly?
Seems to be. There sure seems to be that sentiment these days. Yeah, but it's hard to say. We're still a long ways out, and the tides will change many times.
Well, we started this podcast telling people a lot of optimism on what they can do with their Roth IRAs and how they can do the conversion from the IRAs. And of course, we ended it on a very negative.
That's right.
So I do apologize for everybody. But what we do have a commitment through Gordon is that this is going to be a great webinar to help prepare these Canadian families that are moving back to Canada. And if we get a good 4 or 5 year period, we can work with them, and Gordon can do an excellent job for you. So Gordon, I always tell people it's important to the world is small, be kind to all, and I really appreciate your time this morning, and I promise you we will have a webinar as soon as that app is upgraded with our pop-up feature. So thank you once again for all your time.
Thanks for having me.
Take care.